Hi guys, this is Mike. In this Cinema 4D tutorial, I'm going to talk about the Access Center. A lot of times we'll be having situations where we need to change the access center of an object. Access Center gives us that level of control. And what I'm going to be talking about is the Action, Access To, Object To, View Center, Parent To, and To Parent, as well as all points, selected polygons, and selected edges. I'm also going to talk about the X, Y, and Z coordinates. I'll go over alignment and its rotation and its position, whether it's going to be the world or axis to. I'm also going to talk about point center, its position, rotation, and scale, include children, and I'm also going to talk about auto update and editor update. To use the access center, we're going to need an object. So go to primitives, choose a cube, and we're going to make this editable. Press C on the keyboard to make the object editable. And we're going to go to Mesh, Access Center, Access Center. Now the main point of using the Access Center is to set the object's axis in a polygonal object. So we have a few different options here. We have our center, which when enabled will allow us to use some of these functions in our drop down here for action and center. Now if we go to action axis to, this will move the object's axis center. And we have a few different points that we can move along. We have the X, Y, and the Z. So if say I move this all the way to the X at 100% and I press execute, this will move our axis center, but not the object, just its center all the way to 100% of our object's bounding box. Now the bounding box can be viewed if we go to display and box, we'll be able to see just our bounding box. Now, with our current object selected, which is a box, it makes it a little bit difficult to see this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our primitives. I'm going to choose something like a cone. And I'm going to hide our cube for just a moment. And I'm going to go to our cone. You can see right now our object is a cone, yet it's still in this box area. So I'm going to go to display and choose lines. Actually, I'm going to go to wireframe. And you can see we have our cone. But if we go to box, we can see that we just have the bounding box of our object. So it doesn't matter what object you have, it will have this bounding box around it. So I'm going to hide our cone and go back to our cube, and let's get our display back to garage shading, and I'm going to go back to wireframe. Make sure our cube is selected. And so we have our object center all the way over to the X of our bounding box for our object. Now we can reset this by simply going to reset and then execute, and that will put that right back into the center of our object. So let's go back to our drop-down menu here, and we have Object 2. Now what this will do is we'll move our object center, or axis center to our object, but it will also move the geometry. So for an example, I'll move this over to the X again, press execute, and then what will happen is our axis center will go all the way over to the X 100% to its bounding box, but it will also move the geometry as well. Now we have view center, and let me go to our reset and then execute. Make sure we're in the center again. Now I'm going to go to view center. Now what this will do is if I move my viewport by pressing 1 on the keyboard and then moving our view over, and then I move, say, to execute. Oops, excuse me, hold on for a second. Execute. What that's going to do is it's going to move our object to the center of our view. Now we also have parent to. Now in order to use this, we'll need to put our object parented within something. So I'm just going to choose a null. So I'm going to go to our primitives, choose a null, and move our cube underneath the null. Now you can see right now our null's axis center is right here. And if I go to my cube, you can see where our axis center is here. So if I press execute and then go back to our null is now in the, our null's axis center is now in the same position as our cube's axis center. Now I'm going to undo. Back to where our null's axis center is. So I'm going to go back to our cube and I'm going to choose to parent. Now when I execute, my object's axis center is now in the axis center of our null. Okay, so let me undo back. Now we have some other options here under center. You're going to see we have all points. Now we also have selected points, selected polygons, and selected edges. So I'm going to go to selected points and I'm going to go into point mode. Rotate around here a little bit and I'm going to choose these points right here at the top. Now I'm going to press, or I'm going to go to the X, go to 100%, execute. You'll notice that nothing happened in this point mode, but when I go back to model mode, you'll notice that we have our axis center moves all the way to the X, but it's not in the center here. It's in the center of our, or in the alignment of our points that we had selected. Now I'm going to reset, execute. Make sure we're in all points to reset. Now I'm going to go to select polygons. We could do something similar here. Polygons. Go all the way to the X in 100%. Select the polygons and then we'll go to execute. Now when I go into model mode, you can see that our axis center is now all the way over to the X, but in alignment with our polygon that we had selected. So it's just a few different options here where we can move our axis center. It gives us some greater control of where we want to put our axis center. And now if we ever needed to rotate this around, it'll be rotating from this point or however we want to move our object. So I'm going to go to reset, execute, get that to our center area now. And we also have selected edges as well. Now we have also this alignment button. Now if I disable that, you can see we have a few options that are grayed out. I'll select enable alignment and we have axis, all, X, Y, and Z. Now for an example, say I am in alignment and I go to world and I move my axis center and I'm going to go to this tool here, the enable axis modification tool. and I'm in our move tool, move this over here, and say I go to my rotate tool and I rotate this. Now I disable my axis modification tool, and now when I press execute, you can see that it snaps to our center, but also enables our rotation as well. So we have some control over that, how it rotates and where it rotates. We can choose just the rotation in the X, in the Y, or in the Z. So if I undo and I execute, we have some little bit of control here of how it rotates. So it just gives us a little bit of a control if we want to preserve a certain axis rotation. This will give us that control. Now we have point center, and that's normally used when we have when we're in a certain position, say in one of our parent or two parent options. So if we're going to be changing the position of our parent or changing our object to our parent, we have some control over if we want the position to change, the rotation, or the scale. Now with these options, we also have the ability to include the children. So if we have a bunch of objects in our null, we can then manipulate those, we can manipulate the axis center of our null to our children of our null. And now we also have another option here, which is auto update. And let me undo that for a second. And then we go to our axis 2 and make sure our points center is disabled. We have auto update. So during this whole time, we can changing our X, and we execute, and then we reset, execute. So every time we make a change to our position, we have to press this button, execute. But if we have auto update and editor update, so anytime we make a change, it will automatically update within our viewport. So if we're trying to do some modification of our axis center kind of on the fly, we don't have anything, a very precise position, and we're just kind of getting it into something that looks right, or we're just kind of eyeballing it, it's good to have this auto update, and we can kind of just make some adjustments and see this on the fly without having to go back and keep pressing the execute button. So it gives us an even more quicker way of controlling our axis center. I put a link in the description to download project files. You can also go to astronomic3d.com to download project files from this tutorial and all the tutorials that I've made so far. Thanks for watching.